Aloha, welcome to the Fast, Healthy, and Ono Cooking. My name is Lonnie Taylor, and I'm an AARP Hawaii volunteer. I'll be your host tonight. Tonight, we continue our virtual trip around the world to the Mediterranean. Tonight, we will make Mediterranean-style Mahi Mahi with wilted greens and mushrooms. On behalf of our sponsors, Kaunoa Senior Services on Maui, Uala Leaf Cafe at Windward Community College, and AARP Hawaii, welcome. Let's see. Let me just get the slides here. For those of you who are new or who may be unfamiliar with AARP Hawaii, we are a membership organization for people 50 and older, but what we do for everyone. We hope that with this series, you can learn some techniques that you can use to build or maintain a healthy lifestyle. Let's do a quick bit of housekeeping. This is a picture of what you should see at the bottom of your screen, your Zoom screen, on a PC and possibly the top of your screen on an iPad. Everybody is currently on mute. If you want to submit a question or comment, please click on the button that says Q&A and type in your question. I will be monitoring the questions and making sure they get asked. If you're watching on Facebook Live, you may type your questions in the comments. We are not using the raise hand button. The chat feature can be used if you want to make a comment to everyone or to communicate a technical question to our volunteers. We recommend that you select speaker side-by-side view rather than gallery view for this presentation. To do this by clicking on the upper right part of your screen, once you're in that view, you can change the sides of your slides or of the speaker simply by clicking on and dragging on the middle of the bar. Finally, we have added closed captioning to this presentation for those who have difficulty hearing. You can turn this off on your end by clicking on the CC Live transcript button in the lower right side of your screen and clicking on the hide subtitle. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Chef Daniel Swift, who will be leading us through this cooking series. Over to you, Chef.
Thanks, Lonnie.
You're welcome.
Right. Can you see me?
We can see you and hear you.
Awesome. Thanks for the intro. You did such a great job. We appreciate you very much for doing that for us. Well, welcome everyone. We are still in the Mediterranean. We're focusing tonight on a seasoning rub that I sort of created here to use to bring some of the traditional flavors of the Mediterranean, some Italian influence, and even Northern African into a dish that we work with a lot, which is Mahi Mahi. So you may eat a lot of this, and most of us know that you can eat it in all different styles. I mean, you've seen it in everything from poke to ceviche to baked to pan-seared, roasted, you name it, it works great for a lot of different dishes. So because it's kind of neutral in flavor and it can take spices really well, I wanted to use this particular fish tonight. But of course you can substitute it out as you can with a lot of the different things that we'll go through tonight. So we'll be working on that fish, and that's going to be part of the wilted green salad. And for that, I'm using some kale and then throwing in some fresh romaine at the end. But again, you can use lots of different greens of choice for that. And you don't see a lot of wilted green salads here. You might see collard greens from time to time, or braised kale and certain items like that. But frisee and some of the other heartier greens, you don't really see them tossed with items that are hot very often. I personally really like the contrast in temperatures. I think I've talked about that a lot, where you might have a cold chilled salad, even if it's just your favorite greens, with sliced fresh roasted or grilled chicken or shrimp. So you get that hot, temperature hot protein mixed with the cold salad. So this is sort of a twist on that. And then we have the vegetables and whatnot that are going into it. And then as I was going through this today and setting up the items, I'm like, oh, it seems sort of short. I'm like, I think this would go too quick. So I put together the setup for baba ganoush. I know we did hummus not more than a couple weeks ago, Lebanese hummus, and someone had asked during that show a question about baba ganoush, which is basically the same thing with the exception of adding eggplant instead of chickpeas. So tonight we have that. I'll walk through that. I think it's pretty straightforward. The recipe, I believe Shar was going to post it for you. And then also, if you have the recipe from the previous class where we did the hummus, all you have to do is substitute 1.5 pounds of eggplant for the chickpeas, or I mean, maybe even combine the two together and create your own version thereof. So what you're seeing today with hummus and things like that is across the board, this really wide variety of items coming up. There's beet hummus, there's edamame hummus, basically any bean that you want to puree into a paste. Use the garlic, the lemon juice, the olive oil, the tahini, salt and pepper, a little cumin, and you have a hummus based on whatever it is you're grinding up. So feel free to get creative with that. So the recipe has gone out, and there's 2 parts to it, at least the salad. So I have 2 pans here. One will be for the fish. The other will be for the greens. Now, theoretically, I could pull the fish out when it's done and then go right into the same pan for the greens, but I'm a little limited in space here, so I wanted to just do 2 separate pans. And that's the route we'll take tonight. So feel free to jump in and ask questions if you have them, and I'll do my best to answer them. And we'll just jump in and get started. So here on the tray, I have the fixings for the spice blend that we're going to use sort of as a rub on the outside of the Mahi Mahi tonight. And what I have is an Italian herb blend, and you can pick that up anywhere. And I just love this blend because it saves you so much time and money by mixing all of those together for you. Usually it's pretty similar blend of basil and thyme and parsley, oregano, maybe marjoram. There might be a couple others in there. Each brand's a little bit different. Some have a little bit more of one versus the other, so find the one that you like. But it really gives you a herb blend that works great in salads and meats and fish and pulp. You name it, it's just really universal and good. So I've got that here. I've got a little bit of pepper. On the recipe, I put white or black pepper, and actually I have both here. So I wanted to use a little bit of both. I've got some paprika, and this is just the regular Hungarian paprika, which is, we used a lot in the last month or so with the dried and sometimes smoked chili. This is not a smoked one, but and then ground. So it gives you that chili flavor, a chili pod flavor without necessarily the smokiness in this case. And then I also put on there your favorite garlic herb salt. So we keep a container of that at home. We can either make our own. I think Costco sells it. You can buy it. There's all kinds of brands out there, but it's dehydrated garlic with some different seasonings and herbs that are blended in there. And that makes a really good addition to this. So that takes the place sort of the salt in this particular blend. And then what I think I was going to do today, if the cord reaches, I was going to blend these up a little bit. So I'm going to move the greens to the side. Now you can leave them coarse. There's nothing wrong with that. You get a little bit more flavor from it, I find, when you're eating a dish and you're using the whole like dried herbs, because you might get a whole piece of thyme and you chew on it and it opens up and you get the flavor of the thyme or the basil or whatever that particular item is, especially if it has rosemary. This one doesn't, but if you have a big cheap piece of dried rosemary, you bite into one, it all of a sudden everything you're tasting at that moment is rosemary. So what we're going to do is grind them up and make them all into a powder like the paprika, basically. So I'm going to put in the pepper. That might be a little too much. I'm not going to add it all. I'm going to add in that white. And then all of the garlic and herb salt that I have. And then the Italian herbs. And this is just the coffee grinder. We've used it a few times here. We have one that's dedicated just to making spices and grinding whole spices into powder. So I put that in there, just grind it up. Only takes a couple seconds. And you could, of course, use your regular coffee grinder, but you have to clean it really well. You don't want to grind cumin or something strong, and then you put your coffee beans in there, and your coffee will taste like the cumin or whatever the spice or herb was. And then I can just pop the lid off. Usually give it a tap just to make sure that it's ground. So they do actually make a ground Italian herb blend that you can find sometimes, just like ground thyme versus whole thyme. So it's up to you. But I use the whole, and then if I want the ground, I can grind my own. You don't need to fill your cupboard with a bunch of different spices. Now I can just throw in the paprika, and all I have to do there is just sort of blend it. I'm going to add my pepper over to my salt and pepper mixture that I have over here. Tap the top, and that should do it right there. I've got my herb blend, and I'll just pour it into the lid so that I have it. And now I've got this nice blend, and I can just put that into a container and pop a lid on it, and it'll hold up just fine. Or if you have an empty shaker from a different herb blend that you've used in the past, feel free to utilize that. Okay, so that'll work. Now we can look at the mahi really quick. I've cut most of them. I think the recipe I wrote calls for taking a fillet of about a pound and slicing it into 4 equal pieces. It depends on your portion size. These I had already cut, but I did grab one that I left whole, and I wanted to just show you how I'm trimming it. There's no bone in this one, but depending on the part of the fish you get, you may have some bones that run through the center that you want to cut out. And for me, I like to cut out the bloodline, and you can see the skin's been removed already, but you can see sort of the bloodline that runs along the back. And since we're doing smaller pieces, I can just split off to the side of that, turn it around. I'm going to split off to the side of, and I just get a little bit of that bloodline out. There's nothing wrong with that. You can eat it. We eat it all the time in tuna and different fish. But for tonight's dish, I'm just going to take that out. And then you can see that kind of cleans this side up. Some people will even come back and trim this portion off so that there's none. And that's up to you. But like I said, there's nothing wrong with it. You can certainly use that. And then I can just cut these little pieces in half. And that gives me 4 more. So those probably won't all fit in the pan, but we'll do, 4, maybe 6 of those in total. Now, I don't know if you had any questions, Lonnie, but feel free.
I do. Do you have a listing of the rub that you used, like a print or?
Yeah, it's on the recipe, the herbs that were in there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's at the top of the recipe that we have, or hopefully it is. I mean, I've sent out a couple this last month that I forgot to attach things to it, or I sent a wrong version. So just let me know if there's not, and I'll certainly get that. So I've got the pan heating up here, and that's on, I was on super low just to let it start to heat, but now I can turn it up to sort of medium high. And I can season my fish. Now remember, I got the salt in here already that's in that blend. And I kind of like having it ground really fine in a way because it's also kind of like Cajun or blackened fish. And you see that a lot with ahi here, even in Hawaii, where they'll take the ahi block, roll it in a Cajun seasoning, and then sear it really quickly on all sides. So it's still rare or raw almost in the middle. And then it's just sliced and served like sashimi. So delicious. And I'm going to get both sides.
Chef, what other type of fish can be substituted?
Oh, honestly, you could use any fish you like. For the most part, I would say the only thing you would want to think about if you were doing this with tuna, for example, you wouldn't cook it all as long as you would cook the mahi mahi. You just want to make sure that it's like a nice, I like it rare to medium rare. So however you like the fish that you're cooking, you can cook it that way, but any of these would work fine. So salmon, you could use any of our local fish, opa, you name it, it would work fine for this dish. Okay. So this is heated up nicely. And then here, these are the ingredients that will be going into the dish as well. So I've got a little bit of olive oil. I've got some peppers, lemon juice, onion, mushroom. this is not white wine. I have on the recipe white wine or water, and I just used the mushroom juice. Today we have canned mushrooms. I wanted to kind of highlight them because they're delicious. The nutritional value is almost the same, and the price is much better right now than some of your fresh mushrooms that you're finding in the supermarket. Prices are going up. I'm sure most people have noticed. So a little bit of oil in here. And you can tell your pan's nice and hot when your oil rolls around really nicely, and it might even start to smoke a little bit, and that's okay. And then we're gonna just put our fish down in the oil. And you can hear it sear a little bit. And always be careful when you're dry, especially if you got a little hot oil in the pan. If you're laying down anything that's long and flat, always do it away from you so that it's not gonna splash hot oil on you. If you were to drape it towards you like a piece of trout or something or sole, and you let go, and it like a wave that can splash that hot oil towards you. So always lay it away from yourself. Actually, I think I can fit most of these in here.
Just a real quick question from Joanne. Is there a way to prevent garlic salt or garlic powder from solidifying in the shaker?
Garlic powder, no, not in Hawaii with the humidity that we have, unfortunately. But garlic salt will tend to hold up a little bit better. And I've mentioned a couple times in the class the dehydrated garlic that works really well. And it's like larger chunks. That with your dried herbs will work. The biggest problem that you have, look at the ingredient list. More often than not, they have sugar, and the sugar is what really gumming it up. So if you can find a brand or type that doesn't have the sugar, then you'll be in better shape and it'll hold up. But the fine ground powdered garlic and onion powder, even ginger, sometimes they get rock hard. There's not a whole lot you can do about that, unfortunately. Okay, so that's cooking. I had the same problem. I was dealing with that in the kitchen today, as a matter of fact. And what I do, if you have some at home and it's hardened up on you, you can throw it into a pot of hot water and kind of let it simmer and dissolve. And then you can create like a garlic or an onion powder paste that you can put in the refrigerator then and utilize. So that way you're not throwing it away. But it is kind of inconvenient. All right. So these are a little thicker. On the recipe, I put like 4 to 5 minutes or so. Give them a flip. It's only been like 3, but I'm going to flip them here anyway, because I might go back to the other side. And again, it depends on how well done you like it. Sort of up to you. And that works pretty well. And then I've got the pan over here that we'll be doing the greens in. It's warming up, and I need a lid for that as well. I have the lid here for the fish that I'm going to put on. If I flip it one more time and then put the lid on. But you will need that for the greens also. Okay, so basically we're just going to start to saute some of these ingredients a little bit. Turn that up to about medium. And I've got the peppers. This is just some sweet peppers. It's up to you. Honestly, anything you want to put in this type of dish, you can add. It's totally up to you. If you like it in a salad, then you're going to like it in this particular dish. If you don't want to add peppers, then you don't have to. You could add something else. Asparagus would be great. Anything like that would be nice. So I'm going to just hit this with a little bit of the olive oil. I'm going to drizzle a tiny bit more over here too, just to, so that anytime you're using the dry rub type herb blends, it will absorb that oil because it's basically like sawdust almost. So I'm hitting it with just a little bit more. I'm going to throw in the peppers. Those should start heating up. Oh, I just spilled my parsley. Sorry. I'll pick that up and then I'll flip the rest underneath so you can't see it. Hopefully. And then onion. And the onion here we're going to cut julienne. So I've already peeled it, cut the ends off and peeled it. But julienne, as you might recall, is when we're not doing rings, we're doing the long, narrow strips. So we go from end to end when we do our cuts. And I tend to come in a little bit of an angle. So I follow the contour of of the onion as I chop. So they all stay consistent. Whereas if I came straight down, I'd have a big wide piece on the end. So I just come in, cut across, following the contour, and then when I get to the end, I flip it on its side, and I can do the last little bit. Okay, throw that in there. Actually going to take about 3/4. This is more than I need. Stop there. And they'll break right up. So that's what we mean when we say julienne. You get these little julienne strips of onion, basically what's often used for French onion soup and a lot of dishes like that. I can hit that with a little bit of salt and pepper. Get that going. And then this is done. I really just need to, actually, I'm not even going to flip it again. I'm just going to shut it off. And I'm going to put a lid on it. So it's probably about halfway cooked through, but I'm going to let it sort of steam itself in its own juices. And this is where you have that beautiful caramelization on the bottom of the pot and or the pan. And you'd be able to come back if you wish to remove the fish, put it on a separate plate, and then use the same pan to then start with your onions, your peppers, and things like that. So this is going pretty good. Got that going. Meanwhile, I can turn to my kale. So I went and picked this up, and we're seeing a lot of kale these days. Everybody's using it. It's really popular. It's very hardy. It holds up great. Very robust. I'm just going to tear off the leafy parts. Honestly, with a braised item, I can use the stems. I use those for a lot of other dishes. I'm not going to use it tonight, but it's perfectly edible. And this might look like a really big pile of, somebody at the window, really big pile of greens, but what you'll find when it wilts, it's going to break down into a smaller piece. It'll basically wilt down, but we do want the structure of a hearty green like this to stay together. That's kind of the idea of this particular type of salad. And then we have the romaine, which I'll come back and cut and add fresh at the end because it doesn't really hold up like you would get with the collard greens or kale or something that's really hardy like that. So this I do need to kind of chop up a little bit. I don't want it to be too big. Give this a little stir. And hopefully you can see that. I'll slide this over just a touch. Another minute or so, and I'm going to throw in the mushrooms. So this is similar to what we talked about when we did the chopped parsley. I always, for really hardy things that hold themselves together and they don't bruise and wilt and get crushed when you ball them up, I tend to bring them together as tightly as possible. And then I just carefully cut through. And because it's bound up, every cut's going through multiple layers of the green. And then just that one pass alone almost gets you to where you need to be. I then come back and then turn my knife this way and come down a couple times like this. And that's all there is to it. I know those are cut the way that I need them. So they'll all end up being sort of bite-sized pieces. And that's really fast, really fast way to do it. So now I'm going to add some mushrooms. A little bit of the mushroom juice. Now, if you had the fresh mushrooms, that would be fine too. They go in it as well. Cook those up. I can smell the peppers and onions releasing their flavor. And we don't necessarily need this caramelized and totally broken down. We want a little texture in our salad. So I'm going to just turn this up all the way. Now that the pan gets full, it takes more heat to transfer and do the cooking that we're looking at to do.
You just answered Sandra's question. She was asking if using fresh mushrooms, would they go in earlier?
They go in with the onions. Yeah, absolutely. Actually, these mushrooms could have gone on with the onions as well. Because I left a little bit of juice in the bottom, then I just held off to get that pan a chance to heat up. These burners work really well. They get pretty hot, but it's not quite the same as working on a stove at home. So I do have to modify it just slightly, but yeah, anytime honestly would work fine. Okay, so that just leaves me with the mushroom juice, basically the lemon juice. And you'll see that I didn't include a salad dressing with this salad because in a sense, we're making the salad dressing. We've got the oil already in the form of our olive oil. We've got some juices from the vegetables as well as the mushroom juice in this case, or white wine or water that you would be adding. You got the herbs, you got the seasoning. The only thing missing would be the acidity. And then we can do that in the form of a lemon at the end. So we're basically making our own salad dressing in here. So that's looking good. I'm gonna add a little pinch more seasoning, and now I can put my kale. So if you'll notice when you go and you're putting your kale, anything like that, hearty greens to be braised or cooked, they'll really fill your pot up, but they will break down quite a bit and will. So I do miss collard greens. You don't see that in Hawaii much. I don't know if any of you folks like it. It usually has bacon, a slow cooked, and has pork fat and stuff, but the same sort of thing. And then you can cook them for an hour or two and they'll still hold their texture, which is really nice. Okay. Now remember, this is off. So it's just sort of sitting there resting, kind of slow cooking the rest of the way through, and a little bit of steam being created. You can sort of see it on the lid here, and that will bring it up real gently to the temperature that we want. Okay. Now that I have that here, I'm going to hit this with a little bit of mushroom juice, and I'm going to put that lid on it. So that steam will then start to cook the greens that are on top, all the collard greens from the bottom all the way through the top. And in a minute or two, it'll be ready to toss with some of the romaine. So, oh, and we should have just enough.
You're doing good on time.
Yep, I put romaine hearts on the recipe because it's hearty. Now you could use, there's a few other greens that you could certainly use, like I mentioned earlier, frisee, or anything that's sort of robust. You could even use tatsoi, wonbok, you could use Napa cabbage. There's so many different items that you can use in this type of dish that would work well. But I'd like to come back with sort of a delicate green. So these romaine hearts are pretty robust because we all know they've got the nice rib, hold a lot of moisture, pretty neutral in flavor, but they're not going to just like wilt and die immediately like some of your really thin greens, red leaf, butter lettuce, and items like that. So anything that's a little bit more hearty and robust would work fine. And I'm just going to, normally I don't really need all of this, so I'll just show you the technique I use, but only do the top portion. I kind of cut it lengthwise, especially if you're doing cases of this at work for the salad bar or something. I'll maybe run my knife 3 times as I rotate it to kind of get some cuts that are running lengthwise, and then I can come back and just do smaller bite-sized pieces. So you never want to use romaine and just cut without running the lengthwise cuts first, because what happens then is you end up with these long strips as long as the leaf. And if you're eating it and salad dressing's flipping all over, and it's probably happened to some of you, it's one of my pet peeves. So always do that quick run, and then you'll see your pieces come out and they're all bite-sized. So I used to always teach students and say, you know, pretend like you're having dinner with your grandmother, right? So that, you know, everything that you go to eat is something that she could comfortably eat, or get a little bit of everything in one spoonful. So you never want to serve big giant pieces of lettuce or whatever, because it's not comfortable for most people to eat. Okay, so that I can put right into the bowl, and that'll get mixed together. I'll add my parsley actually here. I've already chopped that up, and that'll be ready. So I'm going to get this out of the way because I think I'll have time for the pot. And if I take the lid off of this, you can see they've turned a nice darker green. They have wilted a little bit. It went down about 3 inches, maybe 2 inches actually. And they should still have their texture. Most of that moisture has evaporated. And I can start to mix in then the cabbage, or excuse me, the peppers, mushrooms, and all of that. So this could be done in a skillet as well. It doesn't have to be done necessarily in a saute pan, or you use a Dutch oven. You just want to make sure that we get it mixed nice and thoroughly. And that looks about right. So you can imagine how creative you could get with the different vegetables as you mix them in there. And you maybe even have a little bit of vegetable left over from dinner the night before. Perfectly fine to go ahead and add it into a dish like this. Now you do have to be quick. This isn't the type of thing you necessarily want to mix together with the romaine and then go take a break and spend 30 minutes doing something in the yard and come back, because this will wilt. We want this to be kind of cold, crisp, and fresh to contrast with the sort of wilted kale and the hot onions and mushrooms and the items that we've added in there. Right, so that'll be quick as we mix it in. So I'm going to just add this to the greens.
So just as a note, Patricia, she usually washes the individual leaves, but she just saw how you cut in your cutting method. So
On the romaine?
yes.
Yeah, with the hearts, those have been washed, and then I wash them as well in the kitchen. That was a tight head, so there probably is potential for water not to reach the core, but whatever you're comfortable with, feel free to make sure that if you want to cut it and then put it in water, that's perfectly fine as well. So I just don't have a sink here, so it's a little bit different setup. But yeah, absolutely, feel free to do that. There's no problem. And then you can see as this mixes, a little bit more salt, and then I'm gonna add. Actually, I'm going to just take a wedge because I'm going to put some wedges on the fish itself. And then this creates my salad dressing, basically. And you could serve the wedges on the plate and allow your guests or yourselves to do that as you're making it. Totally up to you. This goes here. And then we just need to plate it up.
Yeah, so Anne said she saw the artichokes on the recipe and wanted to know, where do they fit in? Are you using canned or fresh?
Artichokes?
Yes.
I didn't see that on the recipe.
It's the part where this dish highlights the contrast in flavors and textures as we combine sheer mahi mahi with herbs, mushrooms, and artichokes.
Oh, the part Jackie wrote.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. Jackie writes the descriptions.
Okay.
I must have missed that one. Thanks, Jackie. No. If I had that, that would be great in here, actually. And I would probably use canned. I mean, more often than not, most people are not using fresh artichokes. It's a lot of work, but either would work fine and it would go in just with your vegetables. So I apologize for that. I guess I didn't read the descriptions. Sorry, Jackie. I do read your descriptions usually. I'm like, what? What's going on? But yeah, artichoke actually would be great in here. That's my fault for missing it. I should have caught that. Okay, now I took the top off of this, and you'll see it's steamed, and it released some of these natural juices. Those are ideally perfect for what we want. We just then go ahead and place our fish on the salad. It could be individually plated. We just do platters here because it's easier for y'all to see. And what do I do with this? I want to taste it, of course. And this gives me an opportunity to, oh, I don't even have to do anything. It's got all those nice herbs and seasonings in there, a little bit of salt, and the juice from the fish. So it's ideal. And that's another highlight, in a sense, to our salad dressing. And that makes a great addition to that. Now you could come back and drizzle some fresh olive oil on top if you wanted to. Put a couple lemon wedges, like I'm gonna do that there. And then if you wanted to, I mean, salads with tomatoes are awesome. So I tend to usually keep a few tomatoes handy. I like them fresh. They could even honestly be sauteed in here. A nice hot tomato would be good. Put a couple on here. And then you got a nice platter that you can serve to a larger group. So that makes a really nice dish. And I'm going to move this out of the way. I think we got just enough time because baba ganoush is so simple. So I want to try to just bang that out really quick. Or do you want to do that? You okay? Yeah. I don't want anybody to get bored. Maybe you got a meeting you got to go to. I have a class at 6 o'clock. I got a 6 to 9 tonight. A grant writing workshop. Sounds like fun. Hopefully, should be. All right, so we've got that there. I got a food processor, just like we did last week or 2 weeks ago when we did the hummus. So all of that's there. Hopefully it's plugged in. Alice, can you plug that in for me? It helps. It came out when I moved that. Or what's the power? Can you unplug the laptop or something else? Because this one's not working. Perfect. Okay, so eggplant is easy. We worked on that earlier. Or are they both out? Well, we'll see how that works. So what we're going to do is peel that. Basically, I just have a peeler. I'm going to take the skin off. And you could even split these down the middle, roast them whole, and you would end up with the same thing. You just then have to come back and scoop it out because we don't want the skin in there. So we're just going to take the skin off. And you can use the large, thick ones. They got a lot more flesh and a lot less skin. But I didn't see them in the store again today. Plus, we have like 4 cases of these that were just donated from a loon farm. So we're using the one that we have in stock on hand. Perfect. So what I want to do here, the ingredients are very basic, same as I mentioned earlier as the hummus. You got the olive oil, you've got a little bit of the lemon juice, you got garlic, a little bit of cumin, the ground cumin, and tahini. And that's really all there is to it. We're substituting the chickpeas for the eggplant. So what I did earlier is I just split them lengthwise. And if they were the large, long ones like this, I just cut them in half so they wouldn't be too long. And tossed them in a little bit of olive oil. Now, if you've worked with eggplant or if you watched the show last week, a lot of times they're soaked in salt water because this is like a sponge. There's just not much to it. It absorbs a lot. So I can either use an olive oil spray, but I've got a teeny bit left over from the previous dish. I'm just going to sprinkle it on and toss it so that it gets a nice coating all the way around. Now, once it's coated like that, I can put it in an oven. And earlier in the kitchen, I think on the recipe that that will be available to you, I put 450 degrees. Now that's pretty hot, but what we want to try to do is get the caramelization to take place and get it done pretty quickly. So I coated those with a little bit of oil. Spray works a lot better for items like this because you can just get a nice even thin coating across it. At one time, flip it over and do the other side. Whereas if you look here, you see where I drizzled it, got a lot here, a little bit there, none there. It's a lot more difficult to be consistent. But as I said, this would probably take all that olive oil. If I tossed it, it would just soak it up. So we don't want a lot of oil. We don't want to overdo it because the recipe itself is going to have a little bit. That goes in the oven. That was off. It was on earlier. Oh, and look what we have. Comes out. Perfect. So this is what we're looking for here. Once it comes out, we want to make sure that you get this caramelization. It almost looks in a way like it has skin on it still, but it doesn't. That's just the meat and the flesh itself. So we'll take that, we'll put it in the food processor. I don't know if you have any questions about this or the salad, feel free to let me know.
Okay, I do have an inquiry from Lonnie at Honolulu. She wants to know, is rubbing of kale to soften an old wives' tale?
Oh, wow. I've not heard that, but it definitely would absolutely break down the fibers that are in it. It will still hold together because it like I said, it is really fibrous, but definitely is going to soften it up. Anything like that would be like a mechanical softening of it for sure. Well, actually, that's a pretty good idea. So we've, I mean, I can pick up a piece of this romaine, still crunchy and nice. That's what we're looking for with this salad. So we still have some texture in the romaine as well as texture in the kale that we did. I usually don't eat while I'm talking because now a piece of food will be flying. But so we've got this cleansing up.
Patricia, she wants to know, how long do you bake eggplant at 450?
Yeah, 450. And I took it, well, our oven's really fast. I have an adjustable fan. I put on here to do it for 10 minutes, which is how long it took me. But basically what you're looking for is that dark caramelized color. And then once that's done, I can add my other ingredients. I'm not going to do all my oil. Do about half. That's going to add some richness. In goes my garlic. In goes my tahini. And it's so simple, but so delicious. And then my cumin. That looks like a lot, but I'm going to go for it, you know. Make it a little different than hummus. And then lemon juice. So there may be some seeds in your lemon, so I always squeeze it through my fingers. Or you can use a strainer into a smaller bowl or a vessel. Here I'm just using one of our little deli cups here. And you can see I do have a couple seeds there that I wouldn't have wanted in my hummus or in my baba ganoush here. So we've got that. Yeah,
Linda wants to know, where do you buy your tahini?
We get all of our supplies from like a broadline vendor like Cisco, US Foods. I think Chef Zone is the particular place that we got this one. And it's in a large tub, so maybe bigger than you would need for home use, but you could probably find it in most of your health food stores, I would guess. Safeway probably even carries it. I'm gonna set that to the side. And then I always try to encourage you to use if you're going to use the lemon juice, try to use the zest. We may as well. We don't want to just throw that in the compost bin or the rubbish can. We want to, you know, take the zest off. If I was smart, I probably would have done it before I juiced it, but that's okay. We're versatile. I start talking and I'm not focusing on what's going on. The artichokes threw me off. Thanks for that, whoever that was. We've been doing the show so long. I have like multiple folders with multiple different versions of the recipes and the time of year that we're doing it. It's pretty neat. Thank you all for tuning in. Okay, so we did get a fair amount of zest just off of that half right there. So that, you know, that makes such a difference flavor wise. And I'm just going to drop it in. And with 1 minute left, I think we're right on time.
Yes, you are.
Close.
Close.
Hang on 1 second. Let me set that there. I've got just a small spatula for stirring that around. I have a little bowl here I can put it in. And I always recommend, anytime you're using a food processor for something like this, stop it at least one time, if not more, and scrape down the sides. because you're going to have things that splash up and stick to the sides and then they don't get ground up. And then just give it another quick blend. It'll work fine. Needs a little bit of salt and pepper.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna add the last little bit of oil. And did you have a question?
No, so will that complete the,
Yep, that would be it for this. I can just take the
Okay.
lid off. Remove it. Take the blade out. And place it in a bowl. I know you don't want me running late, especially when I have class. And you know, and hummus and baba ganoush might not be the most attractive looking item. You might think it looks like banana puree, or it might look like baby food or something, but you can, you know, you can do a little swirl across the top if you want to. And then we usually recommend that you hit it with a little bit of fresh olive oil. A lot of people like to put paprika on it, but in this case, I'm just going to use a sprig of parsley. The recipe has a couple options there for what you can do. And you have a really nice spread, vegan spread that works well for sandwiches, it works well with dips, all kinds of different stuff. So it would even be really nice with this fish.
well, that
So,
looks
any
great.
other questions?
No, that was it. I'm gonna say mahalo, Chef Swift, Alice Swift, the
Thanks.
AARP Hawaii volunteers, and most importantly, you folks at home. I'm Lonnie, and we'll see you next week for air fryer falafel. Good evening. Aloha.
Have a great night, everyone. Aloha.